we're going to discuss the question of how a society mourns a collective tragedy. So, of course, I started thinking about this in the context of Corona, and my thinking shifted and evolved in response to George Floyd's murder and the subsequent Black Lives Matter protests. So I want to ask this question both from the point of view of Jewish communities. What will Yizkor look like when we do go back to shul or in the high holiday seasons? And what will our Jewish community look like and feel like with the absence of so many individuals? But I also want to consider this question from the point of view of Americans. And how should our American society mourn these losses? Both the losses due to Corona and the losses due to systemic racism. And of course, the deep intersection between the two.
If we understand that anti-Semitism is a system or a structure of white supremacist oppression, then we have to understand that it has a goal that is about us and is about also maintaining the white supremacist structure, right? And anti-Semitism largely functions in the context of conspiracy theories and a way to try to make sense of how for, I think much of kind of the right, how to make sense of the ways in which progress movements have been successful in a U.S. context, right? There's a lot of scholarship about the ways in which particularly kind of the white nationalist, white supremacist right in the United States kind of turned towards the weaponization of anti-Semitism following the civil rights movement. Particularly, how do you make sense of if part of your fundamental belief is that Black people are fundamentally inferior to white people? How do you explain the development of Black power in the United States and the success of Black movements in the United States, the economic, political, social, cultural success of Black people in the United States? Well, part of it is what the right found, and what they've been relying on is a narrative that Jewish folks are secretly behind Black progress and Black liberation in the United States.
It's hard to live with so much fear and uncertainty. But our nation was forged in the wilderness. And in so many ways, we can grow more here than in the promised land. For this blessing, I think of a story of wise King Solomon. He tasked his servant to find the impossible, a ring that could make a sad person happy and a happy person sad. The servant searched wide and low, but could not find this magical ring. But the night before he was to report back to King Solomon, he had a revelation. He went to a jeweler and had him inscribe a plain band with 3 words that had the power to realign any mindset. Gam ze ya'avor. This too shall pass. It's a powerful phrase for us right now, because in our moments of greatest anxiety, our mourning record number of lives lost, grief for the loss of milestone events and celebrations or proper Shiva, fear over our shul's economic situation or viability, uncertainty for our families, our professional lives, we are reminded, Gam ze ya'avor, that this will pass. And we will have a day when we are not in quarantine. We will come back to shul again. Our children will return to schools. Our cities and nations will recover. A new normal will arise.
It's a surprising case because you've probably all heard of it, and it's the baker in Colorado who did not want to bake a cake for a same-sex commitment ceremony. Okay? Actually, it wasn't a commitment ceremony, it was a celebration after the wedding, just to be ever so slightly more precise. Now, you may be saying to yourself, why? Wasn't the Baker case ultimately about how do we balance LGBT rights against discrimination versus the religious liberty rights of members of faith communities? That's what it was supposed to be about. But the Supreme Court took an odd right turn, or left, well, I guess maybe right turn. I don't know how you want to think about this one. They took an odd turn in some direction. And they actually said the case was about something completely different that directly addressed the split in 1993. Now, of course, by the time the Supreme Court gets this case, that's brilliant, gets this case, Justice Scalia has passed away. He's no longer on the court. And here, when you had this baker who refused to bake this cake for the same-sex wedding celebration, the court ended up looking at the record and determining that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission adjudicated the case and in so doing targeted religion. How on earth did the Supreme Court know that? Well, the Supreme Court used the information in front of it. Here's a quote from what one of the commissioners said to the baker when adjudicating the claim. He said, "I would also like to reiterate what we said in the hearing for the last meeting. Freedom of religion and religion has been used to justify all kinds of discrimination throughout history, whether it be slavery, whether it be the Holocaust, whether it be, we can list hundreds of situations where freedom of religion has been used to justify discrimination. And to me, it is one of the most despicable pieces of rhetoric that people can use to use their religion to hurt others."
Of the voices of Jews of color in America, as well as the amplifying of Jews of Sephardic and Mizrahi, Middle Eastern background in Israel, starting, I think, even at an earlier point, that amplifying of voices will continue, and that canonical, as we're saying, pieces will emerge over the next 10 years, 15 years, so that whoever edits the new Jewish canon will include those voices without even thinking.